if you don't already know, I am a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein, and the way I was lured was actually using a modeling lie. The way that they treated me, I justified it. The way they, kind of assessed my body, the way they touched me that night, the things they said, the way they spoke. I justified it because I thought they were associated with the modeling agencies, and specifically Epstein with Victoria's Secret.
Stick around to hear more about my experiences. Unless, if you're listening, I'm still waiting for a personal apology.
Hey everyone, I'm dealing with this little cutie who's not feeling 100% right now. So she's kind of taking up my attention a little bit. So I apologize for, a little bit different of format and setting and all of that, but how can you not help this little thing?
First topic.
Les Wexner is most famous for being a multi-billionaire American entrepreneur for brands like The Limited, Bed Bath & Beyond, Victoria's Secrets, and more, along with his ties to Jeffrey Epstein. There was a deep-rooted culture of misogyny, bullying, and harassment in the L Brands company, yet even after being reported numerous times over decades, nothing was done about it. This is most likely because those holding titles such as CFO, marketing chief, and the head of HR all participated in the misconduct.
Allegedly.
Instead of addressing the problem protecting employees, Wexner and other executives offered settlements in exchange for signed non-disclosure agreements. Things only got worse when Epstein entered the picture when he gained Wexner's trust and access to his money and other resources, even though he was highly underqualified. Some believe that Wexner was specifically targeted and that he never stood a chance against a con artist like Epstein.
What do you think? Was Wexner just another naive, unfortunate casualty of Jeffrey Epstein? Did he stand a chance against him? Or was he involved and did he play a bigger role? Listen to the rest of this video, find out about their relationship, Wexner's business practices, and decide for yourself.
Next topic.
Wexner was born Leslie Herbert Wexner on September 8, 1937, to Bella and Harry, a first-generation American and Russian Jewish immigrant. His parents owned and operated a chain of clothing stores. The 84-year-old man was raised in Dayton, Ohio, along with his younger sister, Susan. He has always remained loyal to Ohio and still lives there today in New Albany. Wexner donated nearly $250 million to institutions in Ohio, including Ohio State University's Wexner Medical Center.
Wexner graduated from Ohio State in 1959 with a Bachelor's of Arts and Science.
I believe. Yep, that's it.
He studied business administration, and then he briefly studied law, but, quit soon after and
Went to work at his family store.
Eventually, in 1993, Wexner married Abigail. She was 31 years old and he was 55. Together, they had 4 children, Harry, David, Hannah, and Sarah. As of August 6, 2022, Wexner's net worth was $5.7 billion. Wexner collects Picasso paintings and vintage Ferraris and has a 300-foot yacht named Limitless. To put that in perspective, 300 feet is equivalent to a 25-story building.
25 stories. 25. 25. Do you know what you can fit in 25 stories? That's huge.
Wexner was once quoted,
"A woman at Limited once asked me,
Why do you work?
she said,
You made a lot of money as a young man, so why are you still working?
I had never thought about it before. Forced to consider it, I told her, you know why? Because I think if you stop to smell the roses, you'll get hit by a truck."
Okay, a little dark much? Jeez. Next topic.
In 1963, Wexner opened a women's clothing store in Kingsdale Shopping Center in Columbus, Ohio. He used a $5,000 loan from his aunt to open The Limited, which sold only fast-moving items like shirts and pants. As business quickly grew, he reinvested the profits and continued to expand.
He bought Victoria's Secret for $1 million in 1982 when it was just a tiny failing chain of lingerie shops in San Francisco. Over time, Wexner and the Limited owned several chains including Victoria's Secret, Lane Bryant, Lorna Stores, Henry Bendel, Abercrombie & Fitch, and Bath & Body Works.
Many believe that Wexner's downfall came in the mid-1980s when Epstein entered the picture. By the late 1990s, the company downsized its holdings greatly. And then in the late 2000s, Jeffrey Epstein was accused of some heinous crimes, well, for the first time. And that relationship really began to sour and people started to look at Wexner a little closer. Yet in 2007, Wexner's company still employed about 100,000 people and earned
$10 billion a year.
Eventually, as new allegations were brought against Epstein in recent years, the relationship between the pair was investigated further. Wexner retired in February 2020 after a long,
Successful.
career. His decision to resign came after he received criticism for his ties to Epstein. The outcome is unfortunate, as many believed Wexner lived the American dream. Wexner announced that he would sell a majority stake in Victoria's Secret for $525 million to a private equity firm. However, in late April, they backed out of the deal.
Most likely because of the Epstein stuff. Next topic.
Similarly to how Jean-Luc Brunel used his connections with the modeling industry to find and lure victims, Epstein did this very similar thing with Victoria's Secrets, using his connections there to basically lure people in like me. If you haven't watched my previous video on Jean-Luc Brunel, I suggest that you do, as each episode kind of layers onto the next.
Wexner was introduced to Epstein around 1986 by a close friend, Robert Meister, this guy over here, an insurance mogul whose firm handled insurance for the Limited. As the story supposedly goes, in 1981, Epstein was forced to leave Bear Stearns after it was discovered that he had lent a friend money to buy stock, that there were irregularities with his expense account and rumors at the firm about his relationship with his secretary. After his failures, Epstein moved on to running a small fledgling investment firm while living and working in his one-bedroom apartment. Luckily for Epstein, he bumped into and strikes up a conversation with Meister on his commercial flight to Palm Beach. But was it luck? In hindsight, now knowing Epstein was a con artist, many, including Meister, believe that Epstein specifically targeted him in the hope that Meister would open the doors to his billionaire friends like Wexner. Using a mix of flattery, bullshit, and masterful manipulation, Epstein manages to impress Meister.
Lies, lies, and more lies.
You know, you really impressed me.
Not long after, Epstein invited Meister to play racquetball and started showing up in the steam room at the gym while Meister was using it.
'Cause that's not weird.
During one of these steams, Epstein asked to be introduced to Wexner. Knowing he'd need an excuse, he lied, stating that Wexner's money manager was stealing from him. He graciously offered his services, stating he was a financial bounty hunter who could retrieve the stolen funds.
Yeah, he's stealing, but I could take care of it. I'm a financial
Bounty hunter.
Meister then arranges a meeting to introduce Wexner and Epstein at Wexner's Aspen home. Soon after, Meister started hearing the terrible tales about Epstein's exploits and started to regret his decision. Most likely sensing this, Epstein shows up unannounced at Meister's Park Avenue apartment in New York City with 5 models for his sexual entertainment. Meister reportedly told him,
Get the out of here, and I never want to see you again.
Now knowing the truth, Meister and his wife warned Wexner to stay away from Epstein, but it was too late. Epstein had already been hired to manage Wexner's money.
Although Wexner was a brilliant businessman, at the end of the day, it kind of seems like he was lonely. He invested his whole life into business, and Epstein filled a need. That, combined with his endless amounts of money and resources and connections, made him the perfect victim for con artists like Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think Les Wexner was another victim of the master manipulator Jeffrey Epstein, or do you think he was a little more involved? Honestly, I'm not 100% sure. Before researching this whole episode, I probably would have had a different thought process on it. But the more I learned about how they met, I don't know, I question it.
Wexner is reported to have said,
I'm embarrassed that, like so many others, I was deceived by Mr. Epstein. I know now that my trust in him was grossly misplaced, and I deeply regret having ever crossed his path.
Regardless, soon after, the duo became personal close friends, according to a lawsuit filed in 2002 by the late artist Nelson Shanks. Epstein reported attending Wexner's exclusive birthday parties and flew in and out of Wexner's hometown in Columbus, Ohio, in the billionaire's private jet. Wexner enlisted Epstein to become his money manager, a position held for the subsequent 2 decades, and gave him power of attorney over his financial and legal matters, which Wexner described in the letter as common in the role of money manager.
So get this, Epstein's money, as well as his Upper East Side mansion, the place where I was assaulted, I believe, and the Lolita Express all came from Wexner. The Lolita Express was actually a plane that was owned by L Brands. Epstein had access to Wexner's, well, pretty much everything, his home, his resources, his connections, and that gave him the ability to do what he did.
Moving on.
Like any leader of a significant enterprise like L Brands, Wexner has been associated with all sorts of legal matters. In some ways, this is expected when regularly conducting millions of dollars in business. However, there are some recurring toxic themes over the decades, too. Rather than go into each case individually, here is a brief summary of what's reported in the various legal actions that pertain to L Brands, Wexner, and those close to him. Let's start with L Brands. There was a deep-rooted culture of misogyny, bullying, and harassment in the L Brands company. The board did nothing to address decades of sexual harassment by top L Brands executive. Epstein was bizarrely managing Wexner's fortune, even though he was highly underqualified and had access to company facilities, assets, and personnel. What's even worse, L Brands' marketing chief spent years harassing women throughout the company, including both fashion models and senior executives. The CFO, the head of human resources, had a relationship with an employee, and although there were numerous complaints to human resources, no one, including Wexner, took action to protect the company's employees.
I wonder why.
Instead, they quietly settled with alleged victims and had them sign non-disclosure agreements according to the complaint, with many never coming forward at all.
Allegedly.
Now let's jump into the Wexners. Mr. Wexner knew, or should have known, that Epstein was using his relationship with the Wexners to recruit aspiring models. According to the complaints, Epstein allegedly used Wexner's home for liaisons with victims.
Meaning he assaulted them there.
Wexner let Jeffrey Epstein abuse young girls at his Ohio mega mansion, while the pedophile posed as a modeling scout to recruit his victims. Virginia Giuffre has also claimed that he directed her to have sex with Mr. Wexner. Another victim has accused the Wexner's wife, Abigail, of acquiescence while Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell sexually assaulted her at the couple's home.
These are my experiences with Wexner. Now, I don't believe I ever actually met him. However, his connection to Jeffrey Epstein really did play a role in how my life turned out. If you haven't, if you don't already know, I am a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein, and the way I was lured was actually using a modeling kind of rouge or lie. I never really even wanted to be a model, but the first night I met Jeffrey Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel, they talked about their connections with modeling and kind of steamrolled me into accepting this paid modeling audition. And the way that they treated me, I justified it. The way they, kind of assessed my body, the way they touched me that night, the things they said, the way they spoke, I justified it because I thought they were associated with, modeling agencies, and specifically Epstein with Victoria's Secrets. And that goes further to talk about when I was at Jeffrey Epstein's Upper East Side mansion. I thought it was a modeling, agency, and the decor and there was a lot of sexual art, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, that was around. And I justified that because I thought it was a Victoria's Secret's modeling agency, like a business, not a residential area. And if he didn't have that connection with Victoria's Secrets, I probably would have questioned everything from the moment he started speaking to me. His connection with the modeling industry, and specifically Victoria's Secrets, is what made him seem valid and what made me believe him. And at the time, they were really big with, people my age, and I had just turned 18, and I don't know, they had the wings and everything, and it seemed really cool. And he used this to his advantage, to take advantage of others like me. And it sucks. Honestly, it just sucks. It really does. I keep researching on each of these videos, and I find out that one person after another could have stopped him, and they didn't. Along the way, a lot of these people, including Epstein and his associates, it didn't come out of nowhere that they were doing what they were doing. People knew for a long time.
Allegedly.
And yet nothing was done. And by authorities, by people that were standing around, even if Lex Wexner wasn't fully involved, he had to at some point knew what was going on, and he was compliant. He, even if it was out of fear, he didn't do anything. And if anything, it's similar to what I said about Ghislaine Maxwell. He had the resources and means to do something about it if he wanted to. He could have protected us. He could have helped us. He could have, shown Epstein for who he was.
But he didn't, and he's still not. He's still not helping us.